She shouldn't have looked. Susan Montgomery had spent 72 years mastering the art of not looking. Not at regret. Not at loss. Not at the ghost of a daughter who vanished 26 years ago. But tonight, something made her turn her head. The restaurant was full. Crystal chandeliers cast soft gold across white tablecloths. Conversations hummed like gentle static. Her son Noah sat across from her, reviewing contracts on his tablet, his jaw tight with the same controlled tension she'd taught him. Everything was perfectly normal. Until the waitress walked past. Susan's chest seized. Her breath stopped. The world tilted, blurred, then snapped into brutal focus. The bracelet. Silver. Delicate. 3 small charms dangling from a thin chain. A star. A heart. And initials engraved on a tiny disc. E.M. Elizabeth Montgomery. Her daughter's name. Her daughter's bracelet. The one Susan had given her on her 16th birthday, back when they still laughed together, back when love hadn't yet turned to ice. Mom. Noah's voice sounded distant, muffled, like he was speaking underwater. Mom, are you all right? Susan couldn't answer. Couldn't move. Her hands gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white, nails digging into expensive linen. The waitress hadn't noticed. She moved between tables with quiet efficiency, her black and white uniform crisp, her brown hair pulled into a simple ponytail. She was young. 20-something. Pretty in an understated way that didn't demand attention. And she was wearing Elizabeth's bracelet. Excuse me. Susan's voice came out sharp, commanding. The voice she used in boardrooms. The voice that made grown men hesitate. The waitress turned. Smiled politely. Yes, ma'am? Can I get you something? Susan stood. The room seemed to tilt again. Noah was on his feet too, his hand reaching for her elbow, but she shook him off. Where did you get that bracelet? The waitress blinked, confused. Her fingers instinctively touched the silver chain at her wrist. I'm sorry. That bracelet. Susan's voice cracked. Just slightly. Just enough to betray 26 years of buried grief. Where did you get it? The girl's confusion deepened. It was my mother's. She passed away. Why? The restaurant had gone quiet. Not completely, but enough. Nearby tables had stopped talking. Eyes were turning. Watching. Noah stepped closer. Mom, what's going on? But Susan couldn't hear him. Couldn't hear anything except the roaring in her ears. The bracelet swayed gently on the waitress's wrist. 3 charms. 1 star. 1 heart. And initials that hadn't seen daylight in over 2 decades. What was your mother's name? Susan whispered. The waitress hesitated. Elizabeth. Elizabeth Montgomery. But, how did you? The world stopped. The name hung in the air like a verdict. Elizabeth Montgomery. Susan's legs gave out. Noah caught her before she hit the floor, his arms wrapping around her waist, his voice sharp with alarm. Someone get water. Now. But Susan wasn't fainting. She was drowning. 26 years of denial crashing down in a single breath. The waitress stood frozen, her eyes wide, her hand still touching the bracelet like it might protect her from whatever storm was building. I don't understand, the girl whispered. How do you know my mother's name? Susan looked up. Really looked. And suddenly she could see it. The shape of the girl's face. The curve of her jaw. The exact shade of brown in her eyes. Elizabeth's eyes. Her daughter's eyes. What's your name? Susan's voice was barely audible. Claire. The girl's confusion was shifting into something else. Fear, maybe. Or recognition of her own. Claire Montgomery. Montgomery. Her daughter had kept the name. Even after everything. Even after being thrown out like garbage. Even after Susan had screamed that she was no longer part of the family. Elizabeth had kept the name. and given it to her daughter. Noah was staring at Susan now, his face pale. "Mom, what is happening?" Susan couldn't answer. Her throat had closed. Her chest felt like it was caving in. "Your mother," she finally managed. "Elizabeth. Where is she?" Claire's expression shifted, softened, then broke. "She died 3 years ago. Car accident. Her and my father both." The world tilted again. Harder this time. Dead. Elizabeth was dead. The daughter she'd thrown out. The daughter she'd spent 26 years waiting for. The daughter she'd been too proud, too stubborn, too afraid to find. Dead. "I'm sorry," Claire said quietly, mistaking Susan's shock for general sympathy. "I didn't mean to upset you. I should get back to work." "No." The word came out like a command. Susan reached out, her hand trembling, and caught Claire's wrist. Not hard, but firm enough to stop her. Claire froze. Susan's fingers were inches from the bracelet. She could see the engraving clearly now. EM in delicate script. The star charm she'd chosen because Elizabeth loved astronomy. The heart because Susan had loved her. Before the pride. Before the shame. Before everything went wrong. "I gave her that bracelet," Susan whispered. "On her 16th birthday. We were at a park. She cried when she opened the box. She said it was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen." Claire went very still. You knew my mother?" "I was her mother." The words fell like stones into water. Silence. Complete, suffocating silence. Claire stared. Her lips parted but no sound came out. Her face drained of color. Noah made a noise. Something between a gasp and a curse. "What?" Susan didn't look at him. Couldn't look away from Claire. From her granddaughter. From the girl who looked so much like Elizabeth it physically hurt. "You're lying," Claire whispered. But there was no conviction in it. Just shock. "I'm not. My mother never mentioned. She said she had no family. She said I threw her out." Susan's voice cracked completely now. "And she was right. I did." Claire pulled her wrist free. Stepped back. Her breathing had gone shallow, rapid, like she was trying to outrun the truth. "No. You're mistaken. You have to be." But even as she said it, her eyes were searching Susan's face. Looking for something. Proof. Denial. Anything that made sense. Susan stood slowly. Noah's hand hovered near her elbow, but he didn't touch her. He looked like he'd been struck. His face was pale, his jaw clenched so tight it looked painful. "I'm not mistaken," Susan said. Her voice was steadier now. Years of boardroom composure kicking in even as her heart shattered. "Your mother's full name was Elizabeth Marie Montgomery. She was born on April 7th. She had a birthmark on her left shoulder, shaped like a crescent moon." Claire's hand flew to her own shoulder. The left one. Susan saw it. The recognition. The horrible, undeniable recognition. "She loved old movies," Susan continued, her voice gaining strength even as tears blurred her vision. "Black and white films. Audrey Hepburn. She wanted to be a teacher. She was brilliant, kind, stubborn as hell." "Stop." Claire's voice was barely a whisper. "She met a man when she was 22. A carpenter. Good man. Honest. But I didn't think he was good enough. I told her she was throwing her life away. I told her she'd regret it. I told her." Susan's voice finally broke. "I told her she wasn't my daughter anymore." The restaurant had gone completely silent now. Every table, every conversation, all eyes on them. Claire was shaking. Her hands trembled as she touched the bracelet again. "She never told me. Not once. She said her family was gone. She said I was all she had." Because I made her believe it, Susan whispered. I was so angry. So proud. I thought she'd come back. I thought she'd realize her mistake and come home. But she never did. Because you destroyed her. Claire's voice was cold now. Hard. You threw her out when she needed you most. You abandoned her. Yes. The admission hung between them. Raw. Undefended. Noah finally found his voice. You had a daughter? He looked at Susan like he'd never seen her before. All this time. You had a daughter, and you never told me. Susan turned to him. Saw the betrayal in his eyes. The hurt. I tried to forget, she said quietly. I adopted you to fill the space she left. But I couldn't. I couldn't let myself love you the way I should have. Because every time I looked at you, I saw what I'd lost. Noah flinched like she'd slapped him. I'm sorry, Susan whispered. Noah, I'm so sorry. But he was already stepping back. Away from her. His face a mask of pain and anger. Claire was crying now. Silent tears streaming down her face. My mother worked 3 jobs to keep us fed. She died exhausted and broken. And you could have helped. You could have been there. I know. You could have met me. Known me. But you were too proud. I know. I hate you. The words hit like bullets. Clean. Final. Susan nodded slowly. You should. Claire turned to leave. Her whole body was shaking, the bracelet catching the light as she moved. Wait. Susan's voice was stronger now. Desperate. Please. I have nothing to say to you. Then just listen. Susan took a step forward. Noah was still standing there, frozen, his face unreadable. I know I don't deserve anything from you. I know what I did was unforgivable. But please. Let me explain. Claire stopped. Didn't turn around. But she stopped. Susan's hands were trembling. She clasped them together to keep them steady. When your mother told me she was pregnant, I was terrified. Not of the pregnancy. Of losing control. Of watching her throw away everything I'd built for her. So you threw her away instead. Claire's voice was flat. Yes. And the moment the door closed, I regretted it. I stood there for an hour, staring at that door, wanting to open it, wanting to run after her. But my pride. Susan's voice cracked. My pride was stronger than my love. And by the time I finally tried to find her, she was gone. She'd moved. Changed her number. Disappeared. Claire finally turned. Her face was streaked with tears, but her eyes were hard. You could have tried harder. You're right. I should have. I should have searched every city. Knocked on every door. But I was afraid. Afraid she'd hate me. Afraid she'd reject me the way I rejected her. So I told myself she was better off without me. She was. The words were cold. Clinical. She built a life. A good life. Without you. Susan nodded. Accepted it. She did. And I'm grateful for that. But she suffered. And you suffered. And that's my fault. The restaurant was still silent. People weren't even pretending not to listen anymore. Noah finally spoke. His voice was quiet. Controlled. Why did you adopt me? Susan turned to him. Saw the question that had haunted him his entire life written across his face. Because I thought I could replace her, Susan said. The truth. Raw and ugly. I thought if I had another child, I could forget. I could move on. But I couldn't. Every time I looked at you, I saw what I'd lost. And I couldn't let myself love you because... She stopped. Forced herself to continue. Because I didn't think I deserved to be loved. Not after what I'd done. Noah's jaw tightened. So you made me pay for your guilt. Yes. And I'm sorry. Noah, I am so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix 28 years of emotional distance. His voice was sharp now. Angry. Sorry doesn't explain why my own mother looked at me like I was a mistake. You weren't a mistake. You were a gift. But I was too broken to see it. Claire was watching them now. Her anger hadn't faded, but something else had crept in. Something that looked almost like understanding. My mother talked about forgiveness, Claire said quietly. Near the end. She said holding on to anger only hurts the person carrying it. Susan looked at her. Did she forgive me? I don't know. She never told me about you. So maybe she did. Or maybe she just let it go. Susan felt something crack inside her chest. The possibility that Elizabeth had forgiven her. Or worse, that Elizabeth had simply stopped caring. I need to know about her. Susan's voice was raw now, stripped of all pretense. Please, tell me about her life. Claire hesitated. Her fingers twisted the bracelet around her wrist. A nervous habit. One that probably came from Elizabeth. Why should I? Because she was your mother. And she was my daughter. And I lost 26 years with her. Don't let me lose you too. The words hung in the air. Vulnerable. Desperate. Claire looked away. Looked at Noah. He was still standing there, his expression unreadable, but his eyes were locked on Susan with something that might have been pain. She was happy, Claire finally said. Her voice was softer now. Still guarded. But softer. My father loved her. Really loved her. They didn't have much money, but they had each other. And they had me. Susan's throat tightened. What was his name? David. David Chen. Chen. Not a name Susan would have approved of back then. Not the right family. Not the right background. But he'd loved Elizabeth. That's what mattered. Tell me more, Susan whispered. Claire took a breath. Mom worked as a teacher. Elementary school. She said kids were easier to love than adults. They didn't judge. Didn't expect perfection. A teacher. Elizabeth had become exactly what she'd wanted to be. And your father? He built furniture. Custom pieces. He taught me how to sand wood. How to see the grain. How to make something lasting. Susan closed eyes. Saw a life she'd never been part of. A family she'd destroyed before it even began. They died together, Claire continued. Her voice was steady, but tears were streaming down her face again. Coming home from an anniversary dinner. Drunk driver hit them head-on. They didn't suffer. That's what the doctors said. I'm so sorry. Don't. Claire's voice hardened. Don't apologize for that. You didn't cause the accident. You just made sure my mother faced it alone. Without family. The accusation landed like a punch. Noah spoke again. How old were you? Claire looked at him. Really looked at him for the first time. 22. Same age my mother was when she got pregnant with me. The parallel wasn't lost on anyone. I had no one, Claire said quietly. No aunts. No uncles. No grandparents. My father's family had disowned him for marrying my mother. And my mother's family. She looked at Susan. Well, you know that story. So you've been alone for 3 years, Noah said. Yes. Working here. Among other places. I work 2 jobs. Sometimes 3. My parents left debts. Medical bills. I'm still paying them off. Susan's heart broke all over again. Her granddaughter. Her blood. Struggling. Suffering. While Susan lived in mansions and counted millions. Let me help you, Susan said. No. Claire, please. No. Claire's voice was firm. I don't want your money. I don't want anything from you. Then what do you want? Claire stared at her. And for the first time, Susan saw past the anger. saw the grief underneath, the loneliness. "I want my mother back," Claire whispered. "But you can't give me that." The silence that followed was suffocating. Susan stood there, every word Claire had spoken cutting deeper than the last. She'd spent decades building empires, crushing competitors, commanding respect. But she couldn't fix this. Noah broke the silence. His voice was quiet but steady. "Claire, I understand your anger. I've lived with her coldness my entire life. But walking away won't change anything." Claire turned to him. "You don't know me. Don't pretend you understand. You're right. I don't know you. But I know what it's like to feel abandoned by someone who's supposed to love you." He glanced at Susan. "I know what it's like to wonder why you're not enough." Susan flinched. "The difference is," Noah continued, "you had parents who loved you. Even if it was only for 22 years. I never had that." Claire's expression softened slightly. "Just slightly." "I'm not defending her," Noah said. "What she did to your mother was unforgivable. What she did to me was unforgivable. But running away won't heal anything. Trust me. I've tried." Claire's hands were still shaking. "I don't know what you expect from me." "Nothing," Noah said. "But maybe you should hear her out. Not for her sake. For yours." Susan looked at her son. Really looked at him. This man she'd kept at arm's length for 28 years. This man who was defending her even after learning the truth. "Why are you helping her?" Claire asked. Noah was quiet for a moment. "Because I spent my whole life wondering what was wrong with me. Why she couldn't love me. And now I know. It wasn't me. It was her guilt. Her pride. And maybe if she can fix this, she can fix us too." The vulnerability in his voice was staggering. Susan's eyes filled with tears. "Noah. Don't." He held up a hand. "Not yet. I'm still angry. I'm still hurt. But I'm here. That's all I can give you right now." Susan nodded. Accepted it. It was more than she deserved. Claire was watching them both. Her anger hadn't disappeared, but something had shifted. A crack in the armor. "I don't want money," she said again. "I heard you. And I don't want pity. I understand. Then what are you offering?" Susan took a breath. "The truth. About your mother. About why I did what I did. About the biggest regret of my life." Claire's jaw tightened. "Will it change anything?" "No. But you deserve to know." "Fine." Claire pulled out a chair. Sat down. Her movements were stiff, defensive. "Talk." Susan sat across from her. Noah remained standing, his arms crossed, his expression guarded. The restaurant was still watching. But Susan didn't care anymore. Let them watch. Let them judge. No more hiding. "Your mother was extraordinary," Susan began. Her voice was steady now, clear. From the moment she was born, she was light. Pure light. She laughed easily. Loved deeply. Saw the good in everyone. Claire's expression didn't change, but her fingers found the bracelet again. "I was terrified of that," Susan continued. "The world isn't kind to people like her. The world breaks people who love too easily. So I tried to make her harder. Stronger. More like me." "You failed," Claire said flatly. "Thank God," Susan whispered. "Because the world needed her softness." Susan's hands trembled as she continued. The memories were flooding back now. Sharp. Painful. Unavoidable. "When she was 16, I gave her that bracelet. We were at a park near our house. It was spring. She'd just gotten accepted to 3 universities. I was so proud." Claire's fingers stilled on the bracelet. She cried when she opened the box. Said it was the most beautiful thing anyone had ever given her. She put it on immediately. Never took it off. She didn't, Claire whispered. Even at the end. The nurses tried to remove it, but I wouldn't let them. Susan's breath caught. Thank you for that. Claire didn't respond. 6 years later, she came home one evening. Nervous. Excited. She told me she'd met someone. A man named David. She said he was kind. That he loved her. Noah shifted slightly. Still listening. Still guarded. I asked about his family. His education. His prospects. And when she told me he was a carpenter with no college degree, I lost my mind. The restaurant was silent except for her voice. I told her she was throwing her life away. That she was being naive. She said she loved him. I said love wasn't enough. Susan's voice broke. We screamed at each other for hours. Things I can't take back. Claire's face was pale. What things? Susan met her eyes. I told her she was weak. That she was disappointing me. That if she married him, she'd be nothing. The words hung in the air like poison. Then she told me she was pregnant. Claire went very still. And I told her to get out. I told her she wasn't my daughter anymore. I told her I never wanted to see her again. The silence was absolute. She begged. Susan whispered. She stood in the doorway crying, begging me to reconsider. She said she needed me. That she was scared. Tears were streaming down Susan's face now. And I closed the door. I stood there listening to her cry on the other side. And I did nothing. Noah's expression had shifted. The anger was still there, but something else too. Something that looked like grief. I waited, Susan continued. I told myself she'd come back. That she'd realize her mistake. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. And she never came back. Because you destroyed her, Claire said. Her voice was hollow now. Yes. I destroyed the best thing in my life because I was too proud to admit I was wrong. When did you try to find her? Susan's shame deepened. 2 years later. When the guilt became unbearable. I hired investigators. But she'd moved. No forwarding information. No trace. You could have tried harder. I know. But by then, I'd convinced myself she hated me. That she was better off without me. So I stopped looking. I adopted Noah instead. Tried to fill the void. Noah's jaw was tight. His eyes bright with unshed tears. Claire stood abruptly. I need air. She walked toward the exit. Fast. Desperate. Susan started to follow, but Noah caught her arm. Let her go. She needs space. I can't lose her too. You already did. Now you have to earn her back. Claire pushed through the restaurant doors into the cool night air. Her chest was tight, her breathing shallow. The bracelet felt heavy on her wrist, heavier than ever before. She'd worn it every day for 3 years. A connection to her mother. A reminder that she'd been loved once. But now it meant something else. Something that hurt deeply. Behind her, the door opened. She heard footsteps approaching, slow and uncertain. I said I needed space, she said. I know you did. Noah's voice. But I figured you might want company that isn't her. Claire turned slowly. He stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets. Why are you out here? Because I know what you're feeling. He paused. And I know how easy it is to run. I'm not running. I'm just trying to breathe. He leaned against the wall. Didn't push. Just existed beside her quietly. They stood in silence. The city hummed around them, cars passing and voices echoing. Did you know? Claire asked. About her daughter? Not a word. She never told me. His voice carried bitterness. I spent 28 years thinking I was the problem. And now you know it wasn't you. Yeah. Now I know she was too broken to love anyone. He paused. Including herself. Claire looked at him. Saw the pain in his face. I'm sorry, she said quietly. Don't be sorry. It's not your fault. He met her eyes. But it's not entirely hers either. Claire's jaw tightened. She threw my mother out. Pregnant and alone. I know. And that's unforgivable. He paused. But she's been punishing herself for 26 years. That's its own prison. She deserves it. Maybe. But do you deserve to carry her mistakes? He paused. To let her choices define your life? The question hit hard, cutting through whatever strength she had left. My mother never talked about her, Claire said. Not once. She'd say her family was gone. Maybe she forgave her, Noah said. Or decided not to let anger consume her. Claire touched the bracelet. She kept this. All those years. Maybe that means something. Noah was quiet. What do you want, Claire? I don't know. Her voice cracked. I spent 3 years alone. And now I have a grandmother. And an uncle. Half uncle. Adopted. But yeah. Despite everything, Claire almost smiled. This is insane. Completely insane, he agreed. She doesn't deserve forgiveness. But my mother would have wanted me to listen. Noah looked at her. Would she? Claire closed her eyes. Remembered her mother's voice. Her kindness. Yes, she whispered. She would have. Then maybe that's your answer. Claire looked back at the restaurant. Through the windows, Susan sat alone. Her head in her hands. Broken. Just like Claire. Just like Noah. I'm not ready to forgive her, Claire said. That's okay. Forgiveness takes time. But I'm willing to listen. Noah nodded. That's a start. Claire took a breath. Then turned back toward the doors. Let's go inside, she said. Before I change my mind. Noah walked beside her. Not leading. Just there. As they reached the door, Claire stopped. Thank you, she said. We're family now, Noah said. That's what family does. The word hung in the air. Family. She pushed the door open. Stepped back into the warmth. Back into the possibility of something she thought was lost. They walked back into the restaurant together. The air shifted immediately. Warm. Heavy. Every eye seemed to turn toward them. Susan was still sitting at the table. Her hands folded in her lap. Her eyes red and swollen from crying. She looked up when they approached. Her breath caught visibly. You came back, she whispered. I came back, Claire confirmed. Her voice was steady but cold. But that doesn't mean anything yet. Susan nodded quickly. I understand. I'm grateful you're here. Claire sat down slowly. Noah pulled out a chair beside her. A silent show of support. The three of them sat there. A fractured family bound by blood and pain. I need to know something, Claire said. Why didn't you look harder? You had money. Resources. Susan's face crumpled. I was afraid. Of what? Of seeing the hatred in her eyes. Susan's voice broke. Of knowing that I'd destroyed her completely. So you chose to live with the fantasy, Claire said. The fantasy that she'd come back. Yes. Susan didn't defend it. I chose cowardice. And I've paid for it every day since. Noah shifted in his seat. When did you adopt me? Susan turned to him. 2 years after Elizabeth left. I was drowning in guilt. My husband thought it might help. Did it? No. Susan's honesty was brutal. It made everything worse. Every time I looked at you, I saw what I'd lost. Noah's jaw tightened. So I was just a replacement. You were never a failure. Susan's voice was fierce. I was the failure. You were innocent. And I ruined that too. The silence was suffocating. Claire spoke next. My mother worked 3 jobs after my father died. She came home exhausted every night. But she never complained. Susan closed her eyes. Because I taught her that asking for help was weakness. You taught her that love had conditions, Claire corrected. That family was something you earned. I was wrong. You were worse than wrong, Claire said. You were cruel. You threw her away. I know. Do you? Claire leaned forward. Do you really know what that did to her? Susan met her eyes. Tell me, please. Claire hesitated. The pain was rising now. 3 years of buried grief. She cried sometimes, Claire said quietly. Late at night. She'd hold that bracelet and cry. Susan's tears fell freely. She told me once that she'd had a mother who couldn't love her. Claire's voice cracked. That sometimes people are too broken to give what you need. She was talking about me, Susan whispered. Yes. But she was also preparing me. Claire paused. Preparing me for the day she'd be gone too. The weight of those words settled heavily. Noah spoke softly. She sounds incredible. She was, Claire said. Despite everything you did. She was kind, gentle, strong. Susan nodded slowly. She was always those things. I tried to harden her. But she refused. Thank God for that, Claire said. The restaurant had returned to normal. Conversations resuming. But at their table, time felt suspended. What happens now? Noah asked. Claire looked at Susan. Saw the broken woman beneath the expensive clothes. Now, Claire said slowly, you tell me everything. Every memory you have of her. Susan's hands trembled. That could take hours. I have time, Claire said. For the first time in 3 years, I have all the time. Susan took a shaky breath. Her hands trembled as she reached for her water glass. She drank slowly, gathering strength. Where do I begin? She whispered. The beginning, Claire said. Tell me about when she was young. Susan's eyes grew distant. She was born on a Tuesday in April. The sun was shining. She had tiny fingers that grabbed onto everything. A small smile crossed Susan's face. Sad. Wistful. She was such a happy baby. Always smiling. Your grandfather said she had the biggest heart he'd ever seen. What was she like growing up? Curious. Fearless. She'd climb trees and come home with scraped knees. Susan's voice grew softer. She brought home every stray animal. She wanted to save everything. Noah was listening intently. This was the sister he'd never known. She loved books, Susan continued. She'd read for hours. Sometimes under the covers with a flashlight. What kind of books? Stories about families. About people finding each other. Susan paused. I should have understood what she was trying to tell me. What do you mean? She was looking for unconditional love. Susan's voice broke. And I was teaching her the opposite. That love had to be earned. Claire's fingers found the bracelet. When did things change? Susan closed her eyes. When she became a teenager. She questioned my rules. My expectations. She wanted freedom. I wanted control. You wanted her to be like you, Noah said. Yes. I wanted her strong. Independent. Untouchable. Susan opened her eyes. I thought emotions were weakness. You were wrong, Claire said. I was so wrong. Susan's tears started. I pushed her harder. And the more I pushed, the more she pulled away. Until she met my father, Claire said. Susan nodded. Until David. And everything I feared came true. What do you mean? She chose love over ambition. Happiness over success. Susan paused. She chose him over me. That's not what happened, Claire said firmly. You forced her to choose. You made it impossible. Susan looked down. You're right. I gave her an ultimatum. And when she chose differently, I punished her. By throwing her out, Noah said. Yes. Susan's voice was barely audible. By telling her she was dead to me. Claire's breath caught. You said that. I said terrible things. Susan was sobbing. That she was making a mistake. That she was nothing without me. But she wasn't nothing, Claire said. Her voice strong despite tears. She built a beautiful life. She raised me. She was everything you weren't. The words were harsh, but true. Susan nodded through tears. She was everything I should have been. If I'd just let go of my pride. Noah reached across the table, placed his hand over Susan's. It's not too late to change, he said quietly. Susan looked at him. Then at Claire. Two people she'd failed. I don't deserve your forgiveness, she whispered. Maybe not, Claire said. But my mother believed people could change. She believed in second chances. Even for someone like me? Claire was quiet for a moment. I don't know yet. But I'm willing to try. Susan's tears fell harder now. Not tears of self-pity, but tears of gratitude, of hope. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for giving me this chance. The weeks that followed were complicated, messy, sometimes painful, but real. Claire didn't move in with Susan. She kept her apartment, kept her job. She wasn't ready to let go of her life. But she started coming to dinner. Once a week. Then twice. Small steps toward family. Noah came too. The three of them sitting around Susan's enormous table. Three broken souls trying to heal. Susan learned to listen. To ask questions instead of giving orders. To sit with uncomfortable silences. It wasn't easy. 72 years of control didn't disappear overnight. But she tried. And that mattered. One evening, Claire arrived carrying a small box. Her hands shaking as she set it down. What's that? Susan asked. Photos, Claire said quietly. Of my mother. I thought you might want to see them. Susan's breath caught. You'd share them with me? She was your daughter first, Claire said. You deserve to see who she became. Susan opened the box with trembling hands. The first photo showed Elizabeth and David on their wedding day, both glowing with happiness. Susan's tears came immediately. She's so beautiful. She was, Claire said softly. The next photo showed Elizabeth pregnant, hand on her belly, smiling with joy. That's me, Claire whispered. Before I was born. Susan touched the photo gently. She looks so happy. She was. Despite everything. Despite not having you. The words stung. But Susan accepted them. More photos followed. Elizabeth holding baby Claire. Teaching her to ride a bike. At Claire's school play. Dancing with David in their kitchen. A life Susan had missed completely. She looks so much like you did, Susan said. Same smile. Same eyes. Noah leaned over. She's beautiful. I wish I could have met her. She would have liked you, Claire said. She always said family was the people who showed up. Susan flinched, but nodded. She was wise. She had to be, Claire said, because she didn't have a mother to teach her. I'm sorry, Susan whispered. I'm so sorry I wasn't there. I know you are, Claire said. But sorry doesn't give me back those years. No, it doesn't. Susan closed the box. But maybe it's a start. Claire was quiet. My mother said forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's choosing not to let the past poison your future. Do you think you can do that? Susan asked. I don't know, Claire admitted. Some days yes. Other days I'm so angry. That's honest, Noah said. Susan nodded. I'll take honest over lies. Good, Claire said. Because if we do this, it has to be real. They sat there. 3 people connected by loss, by regret, by hope. There's something else, Claire said suddenly. I've been thinking about going back to school. What would you study? Noah asked. Teaching, Claire said. Like my mother. I want to help kids the way she did. Susan's eyes filled with tears. She'd be so proud. I know, Claire whispered. But I can't afford tuition. I can barely afford rent. The implication hung in the air. Susan spoke carefully. I'd like to help. If you'd let me. Claire met her eyes. This isn't about money. I know. But maybe it's a way to honor Elizabeth's memory. Susan paused. By helping you become what she wanted to be. Claire looked at the bracelet on her wrist. The 3 charms catching the light. Okay, she said quietly. Okay. 6 months passed quietly. Claire enrolled in college, majoring in education with a full scholarship funded by Susan. It wasn't charity. It was restitution. She kept her part-time job at the restaurant and stayed in her small apartment, but her walls softened. Slowly, she allowed Susan to step into her life again. Noah stood between them when old wounds resurfaced. He became the reminder that they were all trying, even when memories hurt more than words. One Saturday, Susan invited them to her estate. Not for dinner. Something else. Claire and Noah arrived together, and the mansion felt less intimidating than before. Susan met them at the door, her posture softer, her eyes less guarded. Thank you for coming, she said. There's something I want to show you. She led them down long hallways, past elegant rooms and expensive art, until they reached a door Claire had never seen open. Susan's hand trembled on the handle. I haven't opened this room in 26 years. She pushed it open. Inside was a teenage girl's bedroom, perfectly preserved. Posters on the walls. Books on shelves. A desk covered in notebooks. Time frozen in a single moment. This was Elizabeth's room, Susan whispered. I locked it the day she left. I couldn't face it again. Claire stepped inside slowly. Her mother's room. Untouched. Waiting. She ran her fingers over the books, the desk, the faded quilt. Why show me this now? She asked. Because I'm ready to let go, Susan said. Not of her memory, but of the pain, of the guilt that kept me prisoner. She opened the closet. Boxes filled the space. Her things, she said. Everything she left. I couldn't throw any of it away. Claire knelt beside the boxes. Can I look? They're yours now. I should have given them to you months ago. Inside the first box were journals covered in her mother's handwriting. Dreams. Fears. Hopes. Claire opened one and read the first page. Mom says I'll never be anything unless I follow her rules. But I want to be kind. I want to love people. Even if it makes me weak. Tears filled Claire's eyes. She was never weak, Noah said gently. No, Claire whispered. She was the strongest person I knew. Susan stood at the doorway, crying silently. There's more, she said. Letters. She wrote me letters after she left. Dozens of them. I never opened them. Claire looked up, shocked. You kept them. Susan nodded and walked to the desk. She opened a drawer packed with envelopes, all addressed to her, all unopened. I was too proud, too angry, too hurt. I kept them, but I couldn't read them. Claire stood, reached for the first letter, and traced the postmark from 25 years ago. Can I open it? They're addressed to me, Susan said softly. But they belong to you now. Claire opened the envelope with trembling hands. Her mother's handwriting appeared, steady and loving. She read aloud. Dear Mom, I know you told me never to contact you again, but I need you to know something. I'm not angry. I'm sad. Sad that you'll never meet your grandchild. Sad that pride mattered more to you than love. But I forgive you. Because holding on to anger would make me like you. And I don't want to be like you anymore. I want to be better. Silence filled the room. Susan sank into a chair. She forgave me, she whispered. Even then. Yes, Claire said softly. She did. And I never knew. Claire looked at the stack of letters. 26 years of forgiveness, sealed and waiting. You know now, she said gently. Claire spent the next hour reading the letters. Each one was a window into her mother's heart. Each line carried a forgiveness Susan had never been brave enough to accept. Some letters were short, simple updates about Claire's childhood. Her first steps. Her first word. Her first day of school. Others were longer, with Elizabeth pouring her heart out to a mother who would never read a single word. She wrote about me, Claire said softly. About how much she loved being my mom. How she wished you were there to guide her. Susan's face was streaked with tears. I could have been. If I hadn't drowned in my pride. Noah lifted one letter. He read silently, then looked at Susan. She invited you to Claire's 5th birthday, he said. She wrote that the door was always open. I never knew, Susan whispered. I never opened them. But you didn't throw them away, Claire said gently. You kept every one. You couldn't let go completely. Susan stared at the pile. Maybe. Or maybe I was just too much of a coward. Claire picked up another letter, dated 15 years earlier. Dear Mom. Claire asked why she doesn't have a grandmother. I told her you lived far away. That you thought about her. I lied to protect you. Claire's voice cracked. She lied for you. Tried to make you look better than you were. Why would she do that? Susan asked, barely breathing. Because she didn't want me to hate you, Claire said. She didn't want me carrying the anger she worked so hard to release. Noah spoke gently. She gave you a gift. The chance to be loved by your granddaughter. Susan covered her face. I don't deserve that. No, Claire said honestly. You don't. But she gave it anyway. Silence filled the room. The memory of Elizabeth hung in the air like something living, gentle, and unbearably heavy. Claire reached for the final letter. The postmark was from 4 years ago, 1 year before her mother died. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Dear Mom, I'm writing even though you'll never read this. I'm sick. The doctors say I don't have much time. Claire's breath hitched. I forgive you. Completely. I forgive you for everything. For choosing pride over love. For missing Claire's childhood. Tears streamed down Claire's face. But more than that, I want you to forgive yourself. Life is too short for regret. Susan was sobbing now, unable to stop. If you ever read this, know that I loved you. Even in the end. I loved you. Claire could barely keep reading. If you ever meet Claire, be kind. Love her the way you couldn't love me. Give her a grandmother who shows up. The letter ended there. Signed simply, Elizabeth. The room was silent except for Susan's broken crying. Claire folded the letter carefully. Then she looked at Susan. She knew, Claire whispered. Somehow she knew we'd meet. She knew you'd have a second chance. Susan lifted her face, completely shattered. I don't know how to do this, she said. I don't know how to be what she wanted. Claire didn't speak at first. Then she stood, walked to Susan, and did something she never imagined she would do. She hugged her. Susan froze, then collapsed into Claire's arms, holding her the way she'd always wished she had held Elizabeth. "You learn," Claire whispered. "You show up. You try." That's all she asked. Noah watched, his own eyes wet. This broken family was finally learning how to breathe. When they separated, Susan looked at both of them. "I can't give you the years I stole," she said. "But I can give you the years I have left. If you'll let me." Claire looked at Noah. He nodded. "We'll try," Claire said. "Together. We'll try." Claire crossed the stage slowly, her graduation gown brushing against her legs. She held her diploma with trembling hands. Top of her class. Bachelor's degree in education. A dream finally realized. In the front row, Susan watched her with shining eyes. Noah sat beside her, cheering louder than anyone else. Their pride was unmistakable. When Claire looked at them, she smiled. A real smile. One born from gratitude, healing, and hope. After the ceremony, they met outside beneath the fading afternoon light. Susan held out a small wrapped box. "What's this?" Claire asked softly. "Open it," Susan said, her voice gentle. Claire unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet. 3 charms hung from it. A star, a heart, and a tiny diploma. "It's to honor what you've accomplished," Susan said. "And to honor her memory." Claire looked down at her other wrist. At the original bracelet she had worn every day for 3 years. A piece of her mother she refused to let go. "I thought maybe you could wear both," Susan said. "The past and the future. Together." Claire slid the new bracelet onto her wrist. The weight of both pieces settled over her like a warm embrace. "Thank you," she whispered. Noah pulled both women into a gentle hug. "We're proud of you. Both of us." "All 3 of us," Claire corrected softly. "Mom would be proud too." Susan nodded, her eyes filled with emotion. "She would be. You became everything she dreamed you'd be." They stood together in the quiet glow of sunset, a family built from broken pieces and second chances. A family that shouldn't have existed, but somehow did. Claire touched both bracelets, feeling the history in one and the hope in the other. "She was right," Claire said quietly. "Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's choosing not to let the past poison your future." Susan wiped her eyes. "I'm grateful you gave me this chance." "We all needed it," Noah added. "All of us needed to heal." Claire smiled faintly. "And we're still healing. But we're doing it together." The sun dipped lower, casting golden light across the campus. Claire walked between Susan and Noah, connected by loss and united by choice. Her mother had given her roots. Susan was giving her wings. And together, they were giving her something she thought was gone forever. Family. Not perfect. Not painless. But real. Honest. And worth fighting for. As they moved toward the parking lot, Susan reached for Claire's hand. Claire hesitated for a heartbeat, then took it gently. Noah walked beside them, his own healing journey just beginning. But no longer alone. None of them were. They had each other now. They had forgiveness. They had hope. And sometimes, that's all you need to start again. Claire looked up at the sky. Whispered a quiet thank you to the mother she'd lost. The woman who taught her that love, even broken, was always worth the risk. The bracelet on her right wrist caught the fading light, a reminder of where she came from. The bracelet on her left wrist gleamed beside it, a promise of where she was going. And for the first time in 4 years, Claire felt something she thought she'd never feel again. Peace. They drove away together. 3 people who found each other in the wreckage. 3 people who chose love over bitterness. 3 people who proved it's never too late. Never too late to forgive. Never too late to heal. Never too late to become a family. If this story touched your heart, consider subscribing to the channel. There are many more stories waiting for you, filled with hope, humanity, and new beginnings. Leave a like if this journey moved you, and share it with someone who might need a message of healing and forgiveness. Thank you for being here. See you in the next story.